Sleep is crucial to our well-being, and yet more people than ever are struggling to get the rest they need. Researchers increasingly recognize that sleep isn't just about feeling rested. It's deeply connected to our mental health and our physical health and our productivity, which is why we are covering it on a show about careers and professional development. Sleep has also become one of the fastest growing areas in digital health, with companies racing to build tools and technologies to help people sleep better. And today's guest is at the forefront of that movement. Nathalie Walton is a leader in the sleep and digital wellness space and is currently helping guide the growth of BetterSleep, the world's leading sleep wellness app, now serving an astonishing 65 million users worldwide. Previously, Nathalie founded Expectful, a platform that supported women through fertility and pregnancy and early motherhood with meditation and evidence-based content and mental health tools. So in our conversation today, we're going to be talking about the growing importance of sleep, what it takes to build a trusted consumer health brand, and how mission-driven founders are expanding access to healthcare. Nathalie, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be speaking with you today.
Looking forward to the conversation as well. Let's get right into it. So you are focused on sleep. Why has sleep become such a major focus in the health and wellness space?
Over the last few years, sleep is no longer seen as a luxury. It is a core pillar of health, and that's because it influences our mental clarity, our emotions, our resilience, our immunity, even long-term health conditions like heart disease, diabetes, obesity. And finally, fortunately, people are just starting to understand that improving sleep is one of the most effective ways to enhance your overall wellness and, frankly, longevity.
What are some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about sleep?
I think that some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about sleep is that you can just catch up on sleep over the weekend. But honestly, consistency is critical. And I've been in many environments in the past where it's like, well, sleep when you're dead. Well, that's not really an option because if you don't sleep, that could lead to premature death. While others focus on quantity rather than quality, if you forget that having fragmented or restless sleep, it could be just as harmful as not getting enough hours. And so what people really underestimate and what they get wrong is how poor sleep affects your mood, your focus, and your decision-making in daily life. Particularly as you're thinking about your career and how to be at your best, it can have a very negative impact.
So there's obviously been a lot of change in this space with new technologies, particularly wearables and mobile apps and the like. How is that changing how people approach their sleep monitoring and sleep improvement?
It's actually a wonderful improvement. Technology is giving people insight into their sleep patterns in ways that just have not existed before. I'm wearing one right now and running a company that helps people track their sleep. I think what's great, and it's something we do at BetterSleep, is we help provide actionable guidance. And the thing is to remember, though, is technology, it's only effective when it's paired with thoughtful, human-centered strategies. Because the data alone, if you just get all of this data, it's not going to help your sleep. You have to know what to do with it.
So what are some of the things that you would suggest to somebody who is struggling with sleep using your app or something else and is realizing that they're not getting the quality of sleep that they need?
We have some fantastic advisors on our board at BetterSleep, and I speak with them regularly for this type of advice. And what they've shared is that you start with consistency. Go to bed and wake up at the same time every day. That really puts you in a state for being able to get the right sleep that you need. Additionally, there's other things that you can do, like you can reduce your screen time, you can reduce blue light before bed, create a cool and dark sleeping environment. I think that one of the most important things is really taking care of your mind, because better sleep doesn't start right before you go to bed. It starts actually during the day. And so something that I do and I've done for the last 10 years is I meditate during the day. I just find some time to calm my brain during the day. And there's research that shows that finding some way, whether it's meditation or breathing practices that you can implement during the day, helps you get a better sleep at night. So I would say consistency, good sleep hygiene in terms of cool, dark room, but also really taking care of your mind and stress throughout the day.
And where does your company BetterSleep fit into all of this? What do you guys provide? How does the business model work? What's the experience like for an individual using it?
BetterSleep is a subscription app. Most of our downloads happen between 10 and 3 a.m., people just either they can't sleep or they're waking up in the middle of the night and it's like, what do
Yeah.
I do? And we have some just incredible content that enables people to get back to sleep or get to sleep, ultimately get better sleep. We have the military method, which is a counting method that helps you get back to sleep. And we have a lot of breathing exercises. But I'd say one of our most beloved features is we have this custom sound mixer so that you can create the right sound mix to get your best sleep. And so maybe this is a little bit odd, but I find the sound of a drying machine very soothing. And so my custom mix is a dryer going off, and then I have fire crackling in the background. I don't even know where that comes from, but it's like you can create an infinite amount of sound mixes, whether it's like white noise, blue noise, green noise. And so that's what we do in terms of helping people get to sleep. But in terms of helping people understand their sleep, we have a really incredible feature where you're able to record your sleep. And so let's say you or maybe your partner is a snorer and you want to record and see, or is something happening in the middle of the night? Do I have a lot of disturbances? You can come to our app, press record, and in the morning, we'll share with you what sleep disturbances you've had. And what I love about this feature is this is something where you don't have to pay several $100s for a wearable. It's immediate. So it's the content to help you sleep, it's insights, and we're actually starting to connect you to the medical providers to help you understand your sleep. So let's say you used our recorder and we saw that you are snoring or that you're gasping in the middle of the night. We can then connect you to providers who can help you understand whether you have sleep apnea. And all of this is covered by insurance. So ultimately, we're creating this sleep ecosystem to help you get your best night's sleep forever.
Sounds like a lot of different things coming together to provide a pretty comprehensive individual customer experience.
Yes, because ultimately that's what you need, because no two people have the same sleep issues. And so There's not a generic solution. And that's why it has to be customized for the individual.
I know this isn't your first dive into the health space. You were running a women's health company focused on helping people through pregnancy that was inspired by your own difficult and ultimately life-threatening pregnancy. Can you share that story and how it's affected your path as a founder?
Absolutely. In 2020, I had my son, and I had a really challenging pregnancy, one where it was a high-risk pregnancy. I was in the hospital multiple days a week and had a very complicated birth. And I found that to be such a harrowing experience because it was so isolated, and mentally it took a serious toll on me, not knowing am I doing everything I can for my baby? And there's just a certain burden that I hope very few people face, but unfortunately I know many women do face, where it's like you have this responsibility of keeping someone alive and keeping yourself alive. And so, really what my experience exposed was that there's such a large gap in maternal care, particularly around postpartum and mental health support. And I think going through that vulnerable period made me understand how women are so underserved and how critical access is, particularly from that empathetic support. And so it was really that lived experience where I realized that, wow, actually, I have the power to solve this challenge. And it's actually a really big challenge because there's a lot of statistics that show that over 50% of women struggle in postpartum. And so not only did I have that lived experience of solving a problem, but I knew that it was a big problem that was worth solving.
Why do you think this is still the case? I mean, we've been talking about this for a long time, that there's gaps in women's healthcare, and particularly as it relates to pregnancy and postpartum. And it just feels like we talk about it, but it hasn't really gotten to where it needs to be. I'm curious to get your view on why.
There's many nuances as to why we haven't gotten to the root cause yet. And it's very frustrating. I mean, personally, I was very surprised by how fragmented the care is. I think it's because we don't have anyone responsible for looking at it holistically. You have on the mother's side, it's like you go to the OB and it really, everything is about the baby. It's like, is your baby healthy? Is your baby safe? That's critical. That's not something that should go away. But at the same time, you would kind of want the mother's doctor to look at how are you doing? How are you doing on a mental health level? And that is just separated from the entire process. And so you have people solving for one area when this really does require a holistic solution. And I think that there are companies that are starting to solve this, but they're small. There's a couple in Portland, there's some in LA, in San Francisco. But I'd say, at least on the national level, healthcare just is fragmented. I think that's how the system is incentivized right now. And it's really a shame because so many women slip through the cracks, and it doesn't need to be that way.
No, it really doesn't. How did that shape the mission and design of Expectful, your prior firm?
How that shaped everything that I've done previously is that in community and together, you have the ability to solve systemic gaps. And so Expectful is really built around community and around sharing stories. And if you think back 6 years ago in 2020, so much of pregnancy on social media, in blogs that people were writing about, it was just really the rosy picture of like, I'm a new mom. I've got this bundle of joy. And we were one of the first platforms to really start talking about the realities of motherhood, of like, oh, the mental challenges, and making it acceptable to say, I'm struggling and I need support, or I've had a harrowing pregnancy and how do I survive? Or I have postpartum depression. I have thoughts of harming myself or the baby. At the time, that just wasn't really discussed. And so how I've always thought about improving healthcare, in particular ones that can be stigmatized, it's just being vulnerable, and it's around sharing the reality of what it's like. That's something that I did at Expectful. It's something that I'm doing now at BetterSleep, is just talking about what it's really like to struggle with sleep problems, or like what it's like to struggle with mental health and pregnancy. And my belief is that the more that you share these stories, the more that you help people realize, oh, I'm not alone. Actually, this is a large problem and there's other people that are facing this. And when you help educate people in that way, it helps give them the tools. It also helps create resources to solve the problems. And in that sense, it's through community and vulnerability that you solve these massive issues that people are facing.
Every company that starts out has to work on building credibility, but it's especially important to build trust when you're operating in the space that you are, right? The health and wellness space. How do you focus on building credibility with your customers?
This is a core pillar of how I lead companies, particularly in the health and wellness space. There's a lot of companies today that are not built on credibility. And how I think about doing this is from a scientific, evidence-backed approach. And how I get that credibility is I partner with experts in the field that have medical degrees, that are scientists. When it's applicable, I do research. And so at Expectful, we ran multiple research studies with tier 1 research institutions that showed that using our product led to decreased episodes of postpartum depression. It led to increased milk production. Here at BetterSleep, I'm working with 2 incredible doctors, Dr. Shelby Harris, who is a women's health sleep specialist, which is incredibly rare. Very few people in the world focus on women's health and women's sleep. I'm working with Dr. Eric Prather at UCSF. And so how you build credibility is you bring in evidence-backed approaches and you build a board of people around you that have been in this space for longer than you have, and they can help guide you in creating the products for your customers. And so as I'm thinking about the evolution of BetterSleep, I have weekly sessions with our advisors where I get their feedback as to like, what do you think about this approach? Is this out there? Is there evidence based on this? And it's through their lived experience in supporting thousands upon thousands of patients that then I'm able to take that learning and then build that into a commercial product.
What are some of the other challenges that you feel like you faced building a digital health company relative to all the normal things that you encounter when you're starting a firm from scratch?
I would say that the biggest challenge that I face in this space is around regulation. In the digital health space, there's regulation issues, privacy standards, there's medical accuracy. At the same time, you're also addressing behavioral change. And that combination is inherently difficult. Unlike other startups, before this, I spent a lot of time in commerce. Trust and safety in your health is just non-negotiable. Like you can get someone a sweater that doesn't look good on them, but you can't give them medical advice that doesn't make sense. And so with that, it's like every feature every message and interaction that you build, it just needs to meet the highest standard and it needs to be evidence-based. So that's the biggest challenge that I find in building a digital health company. Yet it's still so rewarding and I would choose to do so every day.
What lessons from Expectful have you brought into BetterSleep?
Expectful was a community of the most vulnerable population is new moms. I don't know if you get to a more vulnerable population than that. And so in that, what I'm bringing to BetterSleep is empathy and personalization. I learned the experience of building supportive experiences, listening to users, and integrating community and education alongside technology to improve health outcomes. And so I'm fortunate that I had that experience at Expectful that I now get to bring with me to BetterSleep as we're scaling the company.
I know you've spoken about democratizing healthcare. What's that mean in practice?
This was core to my mission at Expectful. It's core to my mission at BetterSleep. It's around access and making sure that everyone, regardless of your income levels or whatever you can afford, it's that you get access to the same tools that everyone else gets access to. Not everyone can afford a wearable, but everyone should have access to insights in their sleep to understand, do you have perhaps sleep apnea, which can have so many detrimental effects to your health? And so what I love about building digital tools is that you're providing access at scale because the cost of subscription, it's very reasonable as compared to a wearable or as compared to a concierge service. And so we're truly building for the masses. People use us in the US, but also people access us in India or in other countries. And so what I love about digital health is that it really lowers the bar for access and you can get the same data. I mean, maybe you don't get as many insights, but at the highest level, you get what you need to know to help you make better decisions. And ultimately, that's what's helpful here.
Here in the US, it really feels like people, for the most part, won't do anything that insurance doesn't cover unless it's an emergency. Are you getting any traction with insurance companies in terms of their willingness to cover the costs of something like a BetterSleep?
There's a long process as to how you would get something covered by insurance. And so in order for it to be covered by insurance, it needs to be a digital therapeutic. We're not necessarily going down the pathway of becoming a digital therapeutic. That being said, we are owned by BetterHelp. We're owned by Teladoc, who do offer products that are covered by insurance and are rapidly increasing that growth. And so it's through our relationship with our parent company that we're giving other tools that are also critical to your sleep, like your mental health and sleep. They go hand in hand. And so we have partnerships with our parent companies to enable people to get access to other solutions that support their sleep, including our sleep apnea partners that are covered by insurance. And so for us, as ourselves, as like a consumer app, that can't be covered by insurance just by the nature. But our ecosystem enables us to get people to connect with the products that will help them sleep better. And those are covered by insurance. And that is really critical to our mission.
It seems so paradoxical in a way. I mean, it's the same thing with exercise, right? Sleep is critical to your health. Exercise, critical to your health. Eating well, critical to your health. And yet, it just feels like our entire system is built around not the preventive things, but the expensive reactive things.
You're 100% right. I mean, our healthcare system is sick-based. And because of that, you just have tremendous costs. And then on top of that, healthcare costs are so high because a lot of doctors are so afraid of medical malpractice. And so running tests that aren't necessary, that spikes costs. And then you just create this vicious cycle of a healthcare system that just doesn't work for its people, which is a horrible thing.
What are some of the other barriers that you think need to be removed to come back to this idea of equitable access to healthcare, irrespective of income level?
I think a big part of it is around education. That is one of the tools that I think can really level the playing field. And that's something that we aim to do at BetterSleep. I mean, when I look at sleep in particular, there's been a narrative in the press for, I don't know, probably since I started working almost 20 years ago of just like this warrior person grinding it out. And now you have everyone talking about 996 and just like working 9 hours a day, 6 days a week. that's unhealthy. And you have a lot of people saying like that that's the path to freedom, that that's the way to go. But when I think about it, it's like, no, actually, that's a really dangerous narrative. And when I think about how do we prove outcomes, it's around education. It's around education from probably the same population that is sharing these difficult messages of the 996, the warrior, to actually something that's more sustainable. And so I think that the more that we can equip people, particularly the influencers and the executives and the celebrities that people follow, about what good health actually looks like and help them understand this, I think that we can slowly start to change the narrative. And I think as more people continue on the path of living this unsustainable life and they actually start seeing the dangerous repercussions that, oh, actually, my behavior led to really unhealthy outcome, where it's like perhaps they got some type of disease because they lived a life that didn't prioritize wellness. That's when we'll probably start seeing the narrative and the education shift. But, we should not wait for that to happen. We should get ahead of it and help with it now.
I think social media paints a picture of extremes almost irrespective of the space that you're in. And it's not helpful in the scheme of things, particularly when it comes to things related to your health, whether it's mental health or beauty or whatever the individual area may be. I think the startup community has always been a bit extreme in terms of its expectations. Tech has had some extreme expectations, but then it grows, right? You see like a big company like a Google that probably had that kind of mindset in the beginning, now turns into just like any other big company where employees want to work a 40-hour week. So I don't know. There are certainly things that are working against the idea of getting good, healthy sleep. Hopefully more and more people will start to recognize it and actually take action toward it.
That is my sincere hope.
There's so much money going into this space from the venture capital community, and some of it's around longevity, right? This idea of the 100-year life being the norm. What role do you see startups and entrepreneurs like you playing in closing some of these gaps in the healthcare space?
What founders and people like myself can do is we can solve problems around issues that we've seen personally. And I think that that's really important because I'm a woman of color. And there are certain health conditions that impact me and my population in ways that don't impact the rest of the population. Yet we have a meaningful TAM. And so my hope is that founders can take the problems that they've faced that VCs might not be aware of, and they can help educate them. For instance, when I was fundraising for Expectful, I raised $4.2 million in my first 90 days on the job after I took over the company and raising our seed stage. And I'll never forget some of the calls that I had with prospective venture capitalists, some which would say, moms are fine after birth. Like, what are you talking about? This isn't a problem. And what worried me is that some of these VCs had partners who were about to give birth. And so I really had concern about them. But I can't really think of many women that would say that mothers, especially new moms, mental health is great. It's just not. And so it's like when you have people that have lived this experience and they have a conviction, they have a point of view, they have the ability to storytell and help everyone understand what the problem is. If they have the capacity to get capital and then build a solution for it, I think we're going to start to see a lot of challenges that have just been underserved being served. And I think that that is a beautiful thing. And what an exciting time to be alive and that we're able to solve some of our most challenging problems.
What are some of the areas of women's health that you think still need more focus, more innovation and investment?
There's a lot. I think maternal mental health is an area that continues to be underserved. There's the menopause support, hormonal health, chronic conditions like PCOS. These are really large problems. And there's also room for products that integrate behavioral, physical, and emotional well-being. I really think that we're just at the very beginning days of solving for women's health. And I'm grateful that there's companies like Maven who have done really well in terms of paving that path. But I mean, women make up 50% of the population. And when you think about things like menopause and perimenopause, I believe I recently saw a stat where it's like 60 million women are going to go through that. in the US, and we're not building for that. That right there is just a large TAM, and it's something that people go through for many years. And so grateful that there's a light being shined on it and that we can start innovating in that space more.
Back to the question I asked you earlier in the conversation about why is it still like this? I mean, I guess it's just because, for the most part, historically, a lot of the medical profession, doctors at least, were men. The researchers that people listen to were men. The people making investment decisions were men. And yes, they may have wives, partners who are about to give birth, but I think there's no substitute for actually experiencing some of these health challenges. And men can only empathize and relate so much. And it takes women kind of pushing for this, unfortunately. It takes women having to kind of yell louder to be able to get the investment in the areas that you're talking about. I mean, everybody goes through these changes, right? Whether it's pregnancy or perimenopause or menopause or whatever. And they have been areas of underinvestment historically.
They have. And I think one thing that people forget, even though it's frustrating, and I don't want to say this as an excuse, but change does take time. So if I look back 10 years ago, I mean, a lot of these companies that were solving women's health issues didn't exist, or at least they were at the infancy stage. And when I look back over the last 6 years, even since I started building Expectful, I've just seen a huge growth of these companies. So change takes time. I understand the historical barriers as to why we're getting there, but we are making progress, and that's something that we should celebrate. And it's just something that we have to remind ourselves, and we have to just continue to do. I mean, great companies aren't built overnight. They take sometimes decades to build. And so it's with patience and just continuing to advocate for ourselves and advocate for the problem that I think we'll start to see change.
More generally, what do you think the future over the next 5 to 10 years looks like in the digital health space? What are the big things that are going to shape the industry?
Well, I think that it's undeniable that AI is going to play a large impact in the health and wellness industry. What I worry about in terms of AI is that people start to treat AI as a substitute for actual care. And I think that that is something that becomes very dangerous. Going to ChatGPT, Claude for all of your answers, sometimes that can yield you good advice, but also sometimes it can't. And so I do think that over the next several years, we're going to see probably a lot of companies, they might go out of business. Like they might not continue to stay relevant because of the innovation in AI. But my hope is that despite this, builders continue to layer on that empathetic, human-led layer, and also like connecting to actual practitioners. That's going to be the differentiator. So while I have more of a gloomy outlook of the future, I also am hopeful that we can leverage AI to improve our human-led empathy and connection to care providers so that people just get better care at a more accessible price point and our overall health just continues to improve. So that would be my hope.
My hope too. So last question, bringing it back to your customers and my audience, what's one thing that you would suggest to people that would have an outsized impact on improving their health?
From my vantage point of running a sleep company, I would prioritize restorative sleep. And that's just because it affects every part of your health, your mental clarity, your mood, your immunity, long-term disease risk. And honestly, improving your sleep is one of the fastest ways to see meaningful improvements in overall wellness. On top of that, like it helps you stay away from the sugary snacks, which I think, leads to a whole other host of challenges. And so prioritizing restorative sleep is one of the most effective things that you can do to prioritize your health and well-being.
All right, we will leave it with that. Thank you for sharing your story and your insights and for the work that you're doing to make health and wellness more accessible to people everywhere and the focus on women's health as well. Thank you for all of that.
Thank you so much, JR. I really enjoyed this conversation.
I did as well. All right, so what do I want you to take away from my discussion with Nathalie just now? First, as she said right at the outset, sleep is really foundational to our health, whether physical health, mental health, our well-being, our performance, our productivity at work. And it's not something that you can catch up on. So consistency really is a key part of the equation. And small changes to sleep habits can have a surprisingly large impact on how we feel and how we function, not just in our personal life, but at work too. Second, and I think you heard this from her story, some of the most meaningful professional journeys start with personal experience. And what Nathalie went through while pregnant highlights how identifying a problem and experiencing it firsthand, especially one that affects your health or your well-being, can lead to building solutions that really resonate with millions of people. I mean, they've got millions of people using the BetterSleep app every day. Third, especially in the space of digital health, trust is essential. You can't take a cavalier attitude that is frankly happening in a lot of other companies toward your consumers. And you really got to combine evidence-based information and thoughtful design and transparency and relatability to earn that trust. It's funny and interesting that the most beloved feature is the sound mixes that can help people fall asleep. And obviously that's a way that BetterSleep has built trust. And finally, expanding access to healthcare, particularly in areas like women's health or for those who are low income or in remote areas. To me, it's one of the biggest opportunity areas in the healthcare space today. And I remain hopeful that through things like telehealth that we've all gotten used to since COVID and wearables and apps and other things, that we will improve people's ability to monitor and manage their health with help from a medical professional without having to go to an emergency room and to urgent care. So thanks again to Nathalie. I invite you to subscribe to Career Sessions on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you found this discussion enlightening, please sign up for the Pathwise membership community and for our newsletter, which is called Path Wisdom. Thanks and see you next time.